Good morning, watchers. Welcome to Brother Sal's Sunday Gathering at the Storehouse, our weekly commentary on world events. We first started in 1996 and have become more relevant ever since. Today, posting 2 shows per week to our YouTube channels, BroSal and Philadelphia Church. For 20 years, we have integrated the historical landscape that unfolds daily with the prophetic analysis anticipated by eschatology. We bring you non-traditional insights and uncensored discussion of issues purposely ignored by media of all kinds. Join us now for the only discussion of its kind. And joining me again this week is my son Tony. Welcome, Tony. What do you have for us?
Good morning, Dad, and thanks for having me on the show. I'm sorry we couldn't record it yesterday on Sunday, but we had a big storm here that hit about 5 o'clock in the morning and knocked all the power out in town until the middle of the day, and then there was a lot of noise going on the street here as everybody was cleaning up. And anyway, it was didn't turn out to be a good day to record the show, so this is the morning after, but everything's still relevant today that was relevant yesterday. And, I've been thinking a lot about the pulling the strings stuff, where we're going with that. And I know that I've been presenting a lot of affirmative stuff toward this reality that includes spirits and evil spirits at that. And Enoch's helping us see now. In our Bible study, we're going through the book of Enoch, and Enoch is demonstrating the story of where these evil spirits come from. And a lot of the people I'm finding in the occult world that are of the spiritual mind, because as we've talked about, the alternative story also has several schools. And it makes me wonder about this 7-headed dragon of Revelation. Is that encounter to this in confrontation and to counter the 7 spirits of God that go out into all the world? And then what do you find in all the world but, Hinduism over in India, and Catholicism and Islam, and the different shamanistic religions, and the occult understanding carried on by the Freemasons. I start to look at all of these as, these are the alternative stories. The real church got stomped out right away. In the sense of having any power and say in the world. They didn't become the Catholic Church. Come on. Everybody seems to know that except the Catholics and some Christians. But, the Christians imagine their Christian faith makes them somehow what Jesus wants them to be. And I say, you find in Revelation that what the Spirit says unto the 7 churches is what, the summation of all that becomes, in my view, trying to analyze Scripture in a rational way and give it its due place as something that might be as extravagant as the inspired words that were written because some angel sat over the shoulder of Jeremiah or Isaiah and said, no, I didn't say it that way, I said it this way. It's kind of hard to believe, but could be that it was meant to be said exactly, say exactly this. And that scribe said exactly that, and when they wrote the wrong word, I don't know, some voice came out of heaven and said, I didn't say that. I don't know. It seems unlikely to me, but I'm willing to, it has the power to demand attention, and always has, even in a world that's trying to get rid of it completely. Excuse me. So, Scripture's an amazing thing. And the occultists and Satanists, it all comes from what we Christians call Scripture. Sacred writings, everything. I've learned that the Kabbalistic understandings are very, very closely tied to the Hindu teachings in the Vedas, in the Upanishads, which are the old, among the oldest texts in the world. You have the Torah of Moses, and strangely enough, right around the same time, about 3,500 years ago, you have the Vedas, the sacred writings of the Hindus coming out. I don't think it's a coincidence. And then that this Kabbalah seems to be very heavily influenced by Hindu thinking in the way of dualism. This spirit that's been separated from its wholeness as a spirit, and been almost divided against itself, I guess, in some schools of thought, or is expressing itself, or is on some journey, in the Buddhist way of having to, the discipline of reuniting itself with the divine nature and getting off this karmic wheel. All that kind of stuff plays out in the Kabbalah, and so it can't be any real coincidence. It's all the basis of understanding of the major schools of thought out of the Vedas. And so there's something that links the world's answers, and what it really seems to be is that as I look at everybody's answers, they're also rational. And some of them are quite deep, and some of them are quite spiritual. But there's one thing that's common to all of them. None of them except that Jesus of Nazareth was what he said he was. He can be a great human. He can be one of the ascended masters. He can be one of the called by the universe to New Agers. They seek the Christ consciousness, right? He can be an example, maybe even the example to some people. But what he can't be is what he claimed to be, and what was claimed of him, that he died and raised from the dead. That nobody can say that, nor can they say what Paul said it all meant, that he's the first fruits of what's to come. That's what heaven is, in essence. That's what this final reconciliation amounts to. If you're in him, and we can debate what that really means and how that goes about, how you become in him, or what that means. Like him, you will receive your body back like he did and never die again. That's the basis of Christianity. And the early church saw that the way that you attain that was by going out and essentially suffering in a spectacle-like manner, the way he did, right? That even when he sent them out, no purse, no staff, right? One tunic, no comfort, nothing to rely on, but that word, and then asked to turn the other cheek, and then asked to love your enemies, and then asked to bless those that curse you, and then asked to give more even if someone steals from you. Give to them after they've stolen from you. And then there's nothing you can do greater than dying for a friend. And that you live by dying. And that you shouldn't count your riches as things that you can store up in this life, but as unseen things stored up in heaven. So it's a crazy teaching. Sorry, nobody wants to admit that. They want to act, Christians want to act like it's so friggin' obvious to follow this Jesus of Nazareth, who's purported to say these kind of ridiculous things. How can that be true? He came out of the grave. He raised. Then why don't you act like it? Why are you worshiping your money? I mean, why aren't you making a spectacle of suffering of yourself? Who are these morons on TV and these huge church leaders that are talking about this shooting in Orlando being God's vengeance on homosexuality? I mean, are you kidding me? That's what you get out of reading Scripture? So I don't know. It's all a leading is what I'm trying to get at. Who's pulling the strings are a bunch of different sources of people that are misleading everyone. And so, as much as I think we might understand spiritual entities and some interaction in almost the wildest fashion of Homer, at the same time, I don't think that, all this Hollywood crud, I've sort of had enough of. It all seems to be diversion. Not that they don't kill people, but I think they kill people over money, not this blood sacrifice stuff. I think they're throwing that out there to divert people's attention from what may actually go on in inner circles at the highest levels to get the greatest power, to be the king, to be the rulers, to, the stuff they fight over may in fact take blood sacrifice. I don't know. But all of this, all this crud, the superstars throwing up their 666 and the horns. I mean, come on. I think that's all pretty, I think they laugh about that because, and the reason I say that is you don't see the Trilateral Commission, and you don't see the World Bank members and the Bilderbergers or even the CFR members making it a big statement like this, and you don't hear of the absurd kind of lifestyles with them. And so why would they throw these rock stars and stuff at it? Because you can see they use these people. They use them. And they make lots of money off of them. And they are disposable. And people like Michael Jackson and Prince, when you look at that, I have no doubt they were murdered. I mean, I really do. They were murdered. But it's, maybe even Elvis, because it's their pattern. But it's because they get to a point where they're worth more money dead than alive to some people. And you can see how people make that case. The contracts that these guys have and the money in their original material, if it's not owned by the right people, if they still own that stuff, it's worth tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. In cases like Michael Jackson, you don't think it's worth killing somebody for hundreds of millions of dollars? Doesn't have to be some blood satanic ritual. It's hundreds of millions of dollars, baby. I love Michael, but not that much, kind of thing. So, I don't know. I'm just trying to get at the reality of our world and why it's becoming more absurd all around us. It's chaotic. And I wanted to, so one of the things that struck me, Dad, is the way, so how do you track these things down? Well, I think symbols are really important because I've been studying about Saturn worship and, all this talk, wedding rings and earrings all come from, Saturn worship. Well, maybe they do, but nobody brings that up at a modern wedding. You know what I mean? The people getting married with the ring have turned that into a different ceremony over a different commitment. Now it represents a commitment. And so it may have started as people honoring their god Saturn, but that's not what people today are doing. So it seems to be just a big divertive story to me, a waste of time. I don't think God cares about that. It's the worship, the giving value to idols. And what's an idol? Not necessarily a statue. Money is an idol. Comfort is an idol. Status is an idol. Fame is an idol. Acknowledgement is an idol. Superiority is an idol. The greatest among you will be your servant, not the one that jumps the highest or throws the ball the furthest or is the acknowledged smartest or wins the most ribbons. That all might be wonderful if you were, I don't know, if that could be put to use to feed the poor and spread the word of true God, the true Messiah, the true act of salvation, the true reality that you live by dying, you get by giving. the greatest among you will be your servant. If that's what those things brought into life, well, yeah, you'd have to say let's use that tool to its maximum. But they seem to bring all sorts of, competitiveness and aggression and violence. And as soon as you put that money at stake and that fame and that superiority and the comfort, the say over others, all that kind of stuff, we worship that, and our life becomes about those things instead of, the one true God who made everything and made you and I to discern, or to be able to discern God from everything that's not God, all the distractions, all the temptations. And we go into this, the world is full of darkness, and that's why I say, so is it any surprise that Christianity today sounds more like, 5 of the 7 churches of Revelation? I got something against you. You've lost your first love. I got something against you. You're following that prophetess Jezebel, who's no prophetess at all, but just leading you all astray. I got something against you. You got a name for being alive, but you're dead. I got something against you. You think you're rich and don't need anything. You don't even know. You're poor and naked and wretched and miserable. So this is the church, in all of its glory and all of its forms. And then, of course, there's a couple that he says, I know your poverty and your suffering, but you're rich. Just hang on. Don't let anyone convince you that you need to get out of that and join their bandwagon. You hang on, and you have the reward coming. And then the Church of Philadelphia, loving your neighbor. There's not many of you, he says. They're weak in strength. So it's no surprise to me. The world is darkness, and the church has always been caught up in that darkness from the very beginning. They started changing the laws on them right off the bat as soon as they started becoming a real movement in those catacombs, their little secret society hiding out. They were obviously noticeable. And Constantine finally says, hey, I don't know what his real motives were. It seems to me because they took out all the Jewish elements, it had to do with destroying the Jewish faith in that region, because they had the power. And now here's this new fledgling that's like a rebel. It's like the way we support the freedom fighters, right? We take and develop a terrorist group and then call them freedom fighters and then fund them to overtake the terrorists that are in charge. And so it seems like that kind of thing. Here's these Christians, and I'm not saying the early Christians were anything but the real church, the only church, the first love that was given everything, given their heads, hiding from everybody so that they could keep talking about this Messiah that had died, but that the apostles claim raised from the dead. So, it's an odd, if you really look at the history and if there's the rationale of it all is such a deep and compelling story, but it's hidden in so much BS, like politics, like everything in our day. I mean, we are, that's where I see we're at the end. Black has become white and white has become black. There's no way to even see truth in the world. It's so dark. And that's why, at least for Christians, I want them to realize, you need to wake up too. These people that are screaming about homosexuality over this Orlando shooting, God's wrath, I mean, that is horrible. That is anti-Christ, people. Anti-Christ in every way. That's not the teaching of the Messiah. That's not the work of the Messiah. That's not the reflection of the Messiah. And it's in fact the work of the false Messiah to bring about all this contention and war in the world, so that he might take his shot of setting up a kingdom instead of God. You got to realize that's what it's all about. He's got to get those Jews to worship him in his temple, at his altar, in place of the God that they want to worship. Because remember, some of them, even though they don't recognize Jesus, they still think they're on this Mosaic path, right? some of the Pharisees, look at Joseph of Arimathea, and look at Gamaliel, and these different people that were arguing during Jesus' time. After he died, and they said, we got to stop these apostles, right? Which one was it, Dad? Joseph of Arimathea or the other guy that argued, don't go after these guys. Come on, don't you remember that somebody rose up claiming to be something and got a band of a few hundred, and then he died, and nothing came of it. And that happened again. And so if these guys, if this guy was just another talker, then nothing will come of it. But if he was something other than that, you find yourself fighting against God instead of man. Okay, so don't think there wasn't some intelligent Pharisees that thought that they were carrying out, just like there's some really intelligent occultists in our modern day, and Freemasons and these kind of people who really believe they're carrying out knowledge. They're trying to enlighten mankind and themselves, and they believe that's what they're doing. And Christianity, if you can look at it, as having been set up as an absurdity so that can start looking more realistic, right? Because this absurdity that Christianity is not the original church. It looks nothing like what the apostles looked like. Just because we're saying Jesus, Jesus, it just makes his name a profanity. What did he tell the Pharisees? You profane God's name throughout the world. So I say that's the same, that's the pattern. He was pointing out the pattern. That's what's become of Christianity. The actual church is a profanity. The name of Jesus is a profanity in the world. And the more I study, the more I'm blown away at things like this, you guys, before I get into some of the news. Dad, the name Jesus. I'm a little unsure as to whether, I'd said on one of the shows that it came from ISIS being translated into Latin. I don't know if that's true or not. But what I do know, what I see now is that, none of the apostles called him Jesus. I mean, Jesus wasn't his name. And it's just odd that, why is the world, do you not see that as potential of this darkness and this power? Is that not going to play any role? Is that just some innocent accident that the most important person that's ever existed, if you're a Christian, that the center of all of this, the true Messiah, is someone who everyone calls by a name that wasn't his name, and it wasn't what his friends called him. It wasn't what they said when they saw him walk up the road. They didn't say, "Look, there's Jesus." And yet that's what everybody's called him ever since. I don't know. Think about how odd that really is, that the name of the one true one wasn't kept intact, but a different name was put on him. And that different name people have associated now, as I've watched these different occultists explain it. One shows that it's Isis, another one shows that it's actually Saturn, and his name adds up to 666, and this is all sorts of crud out there. But the point is, even the name Jesus, I think, eventually is going to be shown to be part of this big misunderstanding, and that's how absurd Christianity is in the face of all this intelligent explanation that doesn't have to deny God. They just deny that this Christianity has anything to do with God. This hypocrisy, which is exactly what Jesus called the leaders of the religion in his day. Hypocrites, blind guides. So anyway, I just want to lead with that because I got thinking about, now in the world, you have all these people who have symbols to represent themselves. And I got realizing how important symbology is, and another day we'll go over the cross and how absurd it is that, that's one more sign of this Jesus who dies on the cross. A, it wasn't his name, and B, the early church didn't identify themselves with crosses. You know, why does the rest of Christianity, even when they know that's true, why is that still the thing you got to have hanging over your church? So anyway, interesting subject matter. But it's because symbols are so important. And that's why I don't want to leave off our connection this week to the pulling the strings idea of who's behind this news that we're reading and where's it going. Because the news to me is becoming more and more just like reading scripts that are being, you picture like a whole big pile going to the office of the people who are, who are doing the editing, putting the magazine together, putting the stories so that they have a cohesiveness. So they're telling this side of the story here and that side of the story in the liberal press and this side of the, bringing out the issues the way they want it, how they want it, out of the piles of submissions that are on their desk that are potential. And they're deciding, this week let's talk about this and through this medium and let's give it this slant. So that's the way I see the news. There's no such thing as this happening in real time. That Orlando shooting, I mean, again, that's not a lone gunman nut. Come on, how many times can they tell you that story? And then not have things be obvious enough? Why, the evidence of it not be obvious enough to convince the skeptics that it was in fact a lone gunman? That wow, that really did happen like that. Why is there always so many holes in their story? Always, like it's a pattern. Like all the Clinton advisors always die in a plane crash or they have to kill themselves. Isn't that interesting? These high-level advisors to presidents wind up killing themselves. Geez, were they that neurotic and imbalanced when they were advising our heads of state? Is it just a coincidence they all die in small plane crashes or jump off buildings? So, come on, you guys, start to see all the levels at work. And so symbols are really important. And I think of, over my life, I've developed a couple of, labels for my surf company and the designs that I've been making and how those have evolved from how important it was to me to represent myself at the time, in my 20s when I first started building things and choosing my logo. And then now again, as I'm, building things out of wood and seeing myself as a little more of an eco-friendly designer. I'm trying to design things that are, made out of wood and made out of natural fiber and recycled, tires and things like this. And so my vision of my logo changes, and I have a different view that's along those lines. But anyway, it's very, you got to realize it's important to people. And so there is a reason that there's so much symbology in, everything from our dollar bill to the way they build the Council on Foreign Relations, the meditation room in the United Nations, all these sort of, even corporate logos that identify with the all-seeing eye or the pyramid, all these things. Doesn't make them Satanists, is what I'm also seeing. But it shows you how important a particular storyline, a particular narrative is to these people. That's, I guess what I'm trying to get at. And that narrative has to do with things that, as we study, show us, lead to this vision of depopulation and a vision like we read a few weeks ago of the eugenics, that they're just, that you can breed, if you can breed strength into animals and certain characteristics, you can breed dogs smaller. Look at dogs range from so small they fit in one hand to, as big and bigger than the average human being. And they say that all comes from, originally one dog. That's what they tell us. And so what do we know except that we got dogs from the size that, that fit in your hand up to bigger than human beings. And if that's possible, why can't you breed human beings? Why aren't they of a nature that some have and so what would be important then, if that were important, except how do some become better than the others? Well, it could only be through some sort of natural selection, the Darwinian version, right? Nature itself has selected some genes to excel while other genes, right? To be more, say, immune, stronger immune system versus a weaker immune system, or, I don't know, better eyesight versus worse eyesight, better teeth. It's funny when you look at things like that, it happens to be these Aboriginals. Is that's why they hate them so much? I don't know. Look at Aboriginal Australians, they got these perfect teeth. They can see and hear really well. You know, wouldn't you think that nature's been favoring these people? Why are they seen to be the lesser races? You go down in South America and along Mexico, all these indigenous people, man, they got these perfect white teeth and sort of naturally healthy bodies. Why are they seen as lesser races on the Darwinian schedule? You know, you got to ask yourself, why do these people like the George Bushes and the Queen of England's? Why do they see them as superior? What's in their genes that makes them superior? And the answer to that may be this side that we're studying with Enoch, that they really believe that whatever was, came into the human beings. And so these would have to be spiritual people and not materialists. This would be the other side of that materialist people that believe the world's all explained in eugenics. It would be the side that believe the world's all explained in actual spirits. And from that side, you've got this story, Enoch, which, if I know that it's reliable, or if I can believe in it with what I've seen and studied, are you telling me that there's not real occultists that know that this story most likely is the oldest one? I think that's safe to say. And so these people believe that there's still a bloodline in the world, or that blood did enter the world, divine blood, sons of God, angels, mated with the daughters of men. And that blood existed. That's who the Canaanites were, and why the Jews went to wipe them out. When you listen to the way the Jews, or the Kabbalistic, when the occultists tell the story, they show the Canaanites as carrying on this old knowledge. Some of them talk about from the angels, and the Jews are these evil ones sent by their evil God. They're these destructive people sent to destroy everything in their path, including all these giants and ancient people that had all the knowledge, that built these pyramids and gave the ancient world the technology that we're explaining in our modern world with aliens. Okay, anyways, like old Gene Scott used to say, long intro and shorter message today. But this is the news show. This is the Sunday show. So I've just been, Dad, the last couple of weeks, I'm so astounded by the headlines that I normally, there's so much BS and repeats, and I just throw up a few up on my header bar and leave the rest in all the weekly mess in my inbox. But this past week, as I was studying the Satanism, I was like, boy, it's quite an interesting week in the headlines. And I found, like, today my header bar looks like it's got 15 or more tabs up there. It was just a lot of stuff. And so I won't have time to read it. So what I want to do is just let me read you all the tabs I threw up there, and then we'll see what becomes interesting, because these will go back a few days. The first one, I suppose, because this, if I remember correctly now, it was last Sunday when this Orlando shooting happened, and I was doing a different subject than the news. So here's the first one that I had it from last week, and it's Orlando shooting, 49 killed, shooter pledged ISIS allegiance. So this is a CNN article, so I wanted people to realize it right off the bat. CNN wasn't presenting that, any doubt, ISIS allegiance, and, well, anyway, no even need to belabor that. Wag the dog. Let's see what kind of wag the dog whirl we got going right now. So the next article I had up there, looks like it was from a June 4th article, so it might be something I found that just been up there a while. And the title is "Violence Breaks Out at Trump Rally in San Jose. Protesters hurl eggs, throw punches, intimidate supporters." And I think I mentioned this when I opened last week, so that is all contention, and that I don't doubt that violence was set up to happen. And I've learned some things about Trump, funny enough, that make sense to me. There's a reason he became such a young real estate tycoon in New York, that's not just something, geez, any old Joe Schmo. Oh yeah, his dad had some, no, his dad was a well-connected Mason, and his son apparently is a high-degree Mason. At least that's what they're presenting. That the father-son, I mean, these guys are players in the New York real estate scene, well-connected through Masonry. So it's not an accident that Trump is the guy they picked for this, to pull this big clown act, to keep everybody's attention off the next president, who I've always been saying is either going to be Jeb Bush or Hillary Clinton. So obviously it looks like it's going to be Hillary Clinton. And they wanted to throw a clown out there so that nobody would really spend the time to show what a diseased megalomaniac criminal Hillary Clinton is. Like, how in the world could anyone accept her? She's obviously, just being set up as the warmongering. She's there to go down in history as the one who, fought the war for us. That's the way I've been seeing it for a long time, and I'm starting to come back to that. And there's even another article about Trump. I'm starting to see that it looks like they're beginning to throw Trump under the bus. And if you remember, Dad, I predicted 6 months ago or more that it would, all this Trump, yeah, they're making a hero out of him, and that's what's suspicious. And that you watch in the last couple of months before the election, all they got to do is make a villain out of him, and that's that. Whoever's opposite him gets the election. And now, despite the fact that probably 75% of every American that's interested at all is on the side of Bernie Sanders as far as actual politics, we're going with the criminal Hillary Clinton. That's who's going to oppose Trump. And Bernie, the player that he has to be, if he doesn't want to see his family dead, he's got to keep towing the line, and he'll, of course, throw in with Hillary so that all the people that really want somebody like Bernie Sanders' politics will think that, well, at least he'll be able to influence the party. So that's how they're going to get Hillary Clinton elected, I'm thinking. Anyway, that's my vote so far. If I was a guy that had to choose, I'm going to say, like I have all along, the Trump Clown Act is simply a diversion. Now I see Trump's an insider. He's not just some clown that they're going to throw under the bus. He's a guy willing to play, he's up there playing his part. And if his part is to go all the way to the presidency, then he does have the right connections. He is a Mason. He's playing his part right on through, and they've given him a criminal in the end so that ultimately they can swing the vote his way, and they can argue that, well, at least, come on. And they can show you that Hillary's a downright criminal that should be in jail, and Trump will have to pardon her to keep her out of jail, or somebody will. Anyway, so either way, I'm not saying it's going to make any difference, and that they still could elect Trump if that's the way it's going to flow. They got two absurd criminals. They could shut down either one. They've got a Freemason real estate criminal, and they've got a warmonger criminal, a xenophobe, inside corporate man on one side, and an absolute, megalomaniac freak, Lord of War on the other side. So, you got a beautiful world coming, people, this next year. So, yeah, but I think the Trump rally, they always knew there was, violence, contention, that's what they want. Here's another one. Nations that recognize the Armenian genocide. This was back from June 2nd. Growing number of parliaments, mainly in Europe, have voted laws or resolutions explicitly recognizing the Armenian genocide, while others hold back from using the term, which infuriates Turkey. So this, of course, is all just political posturing against Turkey, is what it's about. But that's why they're bringing it up now. It's all in keeping the balance, right? So Turkey doesn't get too... You can't have everybody siding with Turkey, or then how are you going to give it to the Hashemite king if that's what's coming, as we've predicted, or if you're going to keep Turkey in check. So you've also noticed that the things aren't going so well for Turkey with the, at least last I looked, with the visa thing. Europe reneged, so they got Turkey to spend the money to stop all these refugees, and then after that, they stemmed that flow or whatever they did, made Turkey spend a bunch of money. Then they reneged on the deal with Turkey to give visa-free access. This one is from June 4th, so that just shows you how far back, I guess, it's been the last couple of weeks that I've been trying to throw the news that makes sense or makes sense of the picture of all this wag the dog world. So here's one from June 4th. U.S. vows actions if China builds new South Sea structures. So, again, I don't even have to read these anymore. You should know what they say when you see the titles now. It's like looking at the movie posters of the modern movies. You know, it's been said forever that there's only a dozen stories in the world. There's only 10 stories, and everything's a variation of the love story or the tragedy or the comedy. There's only so many. And so when you see the poster of the movie nowadays, that's how obvious they're trying to be. Here's the good-looking girl. Yes, she's going to show her breasts. Don't worry, the guy's got a gun in each hand. There's going to be plenty of action. Right? We're going to kill all the bad guys for you. A lot of stuff's going to blow up in between the sex scenes. Right? Don't worry, you won't be disappointed with a boring story that's going to actually try and, educate your mind or tell you something about some part of history. You can see in the poster you're not going to get that. Right? So you don't think that's on purpose? Anyway, U.S. vows actions if China builds new South China Sea structure. So provoke, and threaten. And I think war is coming, probably in the new year, or maybe even, a lot of people like Imran Hossein, they're looking for war before the election. They see that pressure point. I've been seeing that if conflict starts right before the election, it allows them to use the election and the changing of government to go into almost a pure tyrannical, dictatorial type of government that can do whatever they, under the guise of terror and war, can do just about anything they want. I mean, they already are, but, they always have to watch the popular revolt. It's always something that's the only factor that could ever stop them. And I think it's because they know that's not going to happen anymore. It's all in place. Here's one also from the 4th of June. Syrian army pushes into IS bastion as Kurds advance from the north. And you're going to notice, if you've been watching the news, Syrian army's been gaining ground. Iraqi army has gotten, Mosul back or whatever. And the Kurds, everybody's, and we're going to find out why in the news this week. That's why I'm kind of trying to not spend too much time, but just read you through what I think are the important headlines and what they're pointing at. This is saying how ISIS is losing ground to these different armies. In other words, this phase, notice how we're not dropping thousands of bombs anymore. Even before these armies were moving. And again, show me the pictures like in Vietnam. Where are these battles? Where are the war correspondents getting us the pictures of ISIS being defeated? The body bags. I mean, are the ISIS soldiers' body, They're putting everybody in body bags, shipping them. Where are they burying them? Where are all the soldiers that are dying and the battles that are going on for these territories? This is, this picture shows me, one tank, 2 guys on it, coming over a mound of rocks. No perspective. See, 0 perspective. Low, upward looking shot. So I see nothing but blue sky behind him. It's a beautiful day for a photo. And a tank, maybe it looks like there might be something behind them like another tank, but there's no sign of, these guys are sitting outside, looks like they're wearing baseball caps, right? That just doesn't look like anybody's in the heat of battle. I don't see smoke or fire rising up around them. They're not moving away from battle. I mean, I don't know. So you'd think when you run these organizations, media organizations, if you could get a picture like that, you can get a lot more hits, aren't you, on your site than CNN or these other guys that show me a picture. I mean, your CNN, your New York Times, your Washington Post, and you can't get me a better picture than these shots of blue sky, 2 guys in a baseball cap, and you're telling me that Syrian army, Iraqi army, the Kurds, they're all in battles this last couple weeks, if you notice, with IS around these major cities. Nobody with a cell phone. I don't know. Weird to me. I find this unexplainable, except in one way. It's all BS. North Korea will be punished, says France, on June 3rd. Just pointing out that they're going to enforce tough sanctions on North Korea. So all talk, but simply, as they say, the rhetoric with North Korea has not died. So watch out, Koreans. I mean, if you're in Korea, watch out, man. Because there's some other articles as we get closer to what I found this past week. I'm pretty sure we're going to have to see, these acts of random terrorism have to increase, at least according to what they're telling us. Here's a Newsweek opinion. How and why Russia is moving to a war footing. Russia is mobilizing. There is little the West can do to stop it. And it's all just inflammatory BS, because I got something this week that says, they're trying to paint this other picture. Putin acknowledged the U.S. is the only superpower, and they're trying to point out that, hey, we don't want war. We're trying to make friends. He's thrown an olive branch, it says, to European countries because they got some sort of forum or memorandum coming up on the Russian sanctions in July. So they all got to get together as a European Union, I suppose, and decide what their stance is going to be on whether the sanctions, whether they allow people to buy stuff from Europe or sell stuff to Europe. So they got this. So they're making their little goodie. But I mean, come on, you guys. That means tomorrow we can't get an article. Europe buzzes American warship in act of, terror. Russia drops bombs. U.S. soldier dies. What do we do now? Do you see how quick they can move everybody one frame to the next? So don't kid yourself. They're building up a bigger picture in which they're showing us why Russia has to take a stance the way they're doing, because NATO is putting weapons all over their front door in all those countries that after the Soviet Union was driven broke, the NATO countries went in and created coups in Georgia, in Uzbekistan, in the one that's the big problem over there. Estonia, and also in where Kiev, there, Ukraine, right? All these countries that were part of the old Soviet Union, and then they got Russians. What do they want to be part of? American culture, NATO. Why do they want to be set up as enemies politically to Russia when everybody's been praising Russia? Oh, what a good job they did in Syria, right? Isn't all this stuff weird? And I know I was talking about the thousands of bombs that have been dropped. Well, where are all those planes? We were dropping bombs for all this time. Did we do anything? Someone pointed out to me recently how the percentage of casualties in the wars, First World War, it was like a small percentage, 10 or 12%. Second World War, it went up, I think the high teens or 20s% of casualties involved in the war. Still in the teens, I think. Nowadays, it's some ridiculous number, the casualties involved in these wars that are using our weaponry. So, come on, see the lies behind it all, you guys. They have to keep lying to you if they were telling you any of the truth. Depopulation, eugenics, bloodlines, right? Resource utilization. We want the stuff that's in Africa. We don't want the Africans to have it. We want the stuff that's in the Middle East. We don't want a bunch of Arabs and Persians and Muslims that believe in the one true God and are waiting for Jesus to come. We don't want these people to be a force in the world, but we do want the stuff they have in that land, ultimately. We do want that land, and we want rule over that land and over those people. I mean, that seems to be, I'm not saying we, America, I'm saying whoever's selling the guns and driving the geopolitical policy, that seems to be what they're saying. That's why Africa's in the state it's in. And see, America and South America, I say they already did that right after World War II. Because they already had the Cold War, they were in charge, they were using the Russian, the Cold War, and the army that was still over in Europe, that my father was part of in the 50s, the peacekeepers, just, right? When my father was a young man, part of the, blindly doing his part in keeping freedom and liberty. Meanwhile, we were slaughtering people in South America and stealing all their land for the fruit company, so that today the money that's extorted from the workers in North American cities, say San Francisco, Los Angeles, Seattle, Portland, Detroit, Chicago, Minneapolis, Minnesota, can eat fresh mangoes. Can pay $3 or $4 for a mango that some poor guy grows down in South America, probably, or maybe Mexico, depending on the time of season, and is shipped up to you in Minneapolis, and you can pay $3 or $4 for one. And that guy works his life for that mango field. Does he get to buy a home and property, and does he get to own that field? No. A big corporation from America normally, or a conglomerate whose money comes from wherever, all over the world sometimes. They own that property. They own the life of that farmer. And that farmer gets, guess what? Minimum competitive wage, right? So, this is what's supposed to be what the great and free American Constitution, I mean, really, this is what we stand for? You wonder why people hate us. And it is no wonder, I think it's on purpose that they're showing the world why to hate us. I mean, all this internet is part of the end, you guys. It's not part of their demise, but our demise in the West. It's helping the world come against America. It's helping what's going to be the destruction of America be cheered, I think, by a lot of the world. I really believe I'm starting to see that. That's why they haven't invested in America for most of its, back in the days of Jefferson and stuff, they invested, they had slave labor, and they let those slaves build beautiful edifices, and but they don't anymore. They build out of glass and steel, and, cheap material that they don't rebuild the infrastructure. They don't build anything like it's made to last forever. So you got to wonder why, given the sort of history that they come from and the money that they have. And if you know that this is where you're going to be forever, or you're going to, why wouldn't you be setting your castles up like they did in Europe? And they do, but they look sort of temporary. And the cities that fund it all through this industrialized world that America seems to be, to me, nothing but a big factory. It's a country that's a big factory in their mind. It's got a lot of resources, and they're going to use it like a factory and rape those resources until they start over. And then, they're going to let those forests regrow. Let those rivers get full of probably beavers again, and so they can come and start taking them a little, on a sustainable level. So they can always keep wearing beaver skin, but they're not going to let that. They're not going to let the profane masses destroy the earth over that. No, they're going to box them into cities and put them to work. And that's why they've kept those cities only at a certain level of necessary function, and they don't spend too much to improve them or rebuild them. And certainly in this modern world, that's one of, to me, the great indicators of our time, is that these people that they don't mind telling you that, less than 10% of these corporations own, 90% of the business. Less than 1% of the actual people own, 90% of the money. Less than 1% or 10% of the people own 90% of the land. Those kind of crazy numbers. They don't mind telling you that. That's how hopeless and helpless it is for us that have the 10%, the 90% of us that hold the 10%. That's what they think of their chances of us taking it back. And meanwhile, in this time, they can't spend enough to maintain at least the water systems and the sewage systems and the dam systems and the bridge systems and the street systems, right? The infrastructure that the 90% rely on to keep them going to work. Why wouldn't they do that unless, the work's coming to an end, people, and the destruction is coming soon, right? Earthquakes and volcanoes and flooding and wars and riots and, right? That's what's coming soon. Pestilence. Am I right? I don't know. That's what Nostradamus saw coming. That seems to be what Revelation sees coming. Why would you think, why do you keep saying, Christian, we're in Revelation? You don't believe, why do you think America's great? And why those things don't go together? How could America be great and we're in Revelation? If America was great, Christianity would be on the rise. Good would be in the world and have a strength. The world would be getting to be a better place, not have more weapons and pestilence becoming more and more prevalent. So, if you don't have that view, then I'm either not doing my job or you're not really watching my channel. You're not paying much attention to what we're saying here. Dad's channel that hosts my recordings. Or you're not paying much attention. So anyway, let's keep moving. But that one was how and why Russia's moving to a war footing. So that's good to know, right? Russia's moving to a war footing. Those guys. Here's one from June 11th. Turkey admits no visa-free European travel deal by July 1st. So there you go. Then appears Turkey got screwed, or whoever's pulling the strings, screwed Turkey. We'll tackle that one when it becomes a more important issue with the refugees and stuff. Here's a world out of who knows. I guess it doesn't matter who these rags are. Yahoo puts them up, whether they're CNN or whoever. Russia accuses U.S. of show of force as NATO tension builds. This is from the 10th of June. That last one, how and why Russia's moving to a war footing, was on the 11th of June, same people. So this is their, right? This is their storyline. It just has an N up there. Newsweek, I imagine, might be who this is, but they even have a subscribe now button, Dad, but it doesn't say who they are. Is that weird? My father grew up in the days of marketing and the identification of your company through logos and through branding and such was so important. So here's an N, but it doesn't say what that N stands for. Nothing around the caption's got a video that you can play. Nothing around the caption. Then after the first couple paragraphs has a big, a bar. Subscribe now. Free phone tablet charger worth over $60. So it's got your point of sale there, banner, ad, but doesn't say subscribe now to Newsweek with the ad. So isn't that weird? I don't know who you are. Just N. Anyway, End's position appears to be that Russia's moving toward a war stance. And End's position is Russia accuses U.S. of show of force as NATO tension builds. Okay, so here's another one. This is from June 10th. Kurdish group warns tourists that Turkey's no longer safe. All right, so that's good news, huh, guys, for our peaceful world. Kurdish group, and that's self-explanatory, right? Kurds are tired of what the American, what these Turks are doing with their newfound power. Because this wasn't going on before this Syria war, right? And all these bombs all over, these thousands of weapons that appear to have done nothing. I mean, I don't know what it destroyed, because ISIS just kept blowing stuff up, and now we got the Syrian, Iraqi, Kurdish forces that, we're sending some money and intelligence to, we're told, and this and that. But come on, show me the pictures. They show us in the hundreds at the most, dozens of forces. They talk about 2,500 people. And I keep mentioning that because I got a couple articles, I hope, that I remember, that I thought I put up on these tabs, Dad, that are going to enlighten you to why I keep mentioning these numbers and these lack of pictures of things going on. Where are these clash of forces? If you're talking about 2,500 people strong, if that's what the enemy is, why don't we amass 20,000 people and march on in? So it's just, especially when it's costing this to the world. What costs more, I suppose? What strategist doesn't look at it and says, nah, let's bomb them with 10,000 bombs that have that kill all these civilians as collateral damage, that destroy all this property, all these, functioning roads and bridges. No, let's do that instead. Let's get Russia involved and maybe even get into a third world war. Let's not just amass 10 or 20,000 NATO troops and go walk in there arm in arm with the Iraqis, the Syrians, and the Kurds, because it's not going to be hard to get them to join you. If NATO's got 10,000 guys, maybe they got 10,000 guys. And well, you got enough to walk through these towns and not destroy all this stuff. I never even hear that option discussed. Am I that stupid? Ha ha ha, you couldn't do that. Okay, I don't know, show me the pictures of where that could be resisted. So anyway, the Kurdish group's already telling the tourists don't go to Turkey. So that bums me out. More innocent people being set up for the slaughter. Okay, here's one from not long ago, the 18th, Business Insider. It says Iraqi forces have made rapid, unexpected gains against ISIS, but the victories may signal an ominous new reality. And this is one that I had wanted to read some of, but I don't think I will today, Dad, unless I get through these and have time to come back. But there is a point to be made out of course, being Business Insider, you can bet you get a fantastic graphic done like in the days that you used to do the magazine ads, and they know where everybody is, of course, and can show you with colored legends who's where and who's doing what. But again, we've never been able to send in enough people to just stop these guys. So anyway, from the 18th, they're telling us that Iraqi forces have made rapid, unexpected gains against ISIS. But unfortunately, in the same article, they're going to tell you that because of that, they're expecting a shift. And they don't say that it may happen. This is what really frustrates me. I gotta read you this part right here. This is a quote from this Martin, who's Institute of Study of War or something. Who cares, right? They're all just some mouthpiece. They don't even care who they quote or what name they use. They could draw it out of a hat. Doesn't matter. Quote, within Iraq, we will see them shift more toward attacking civilian tactics as they lose territory, Martin said. And outside the country, there will likely be a renewed emphasis on sending foreign recruits to Libya where the group's been trying to establish a foothold. Of course, since we went in and took out the regime so that they could establish a foothold. But anyway, there's another part in here where it uses the same words to say they will start attacking other areas around there using terrorist activity. So not they might or will have to be on the lookout for, but they will. So anyway, this hasn't stopped. It won't stop. I mean, I'm really seeing that. The wars will not stop. The 7-year covenant will be an interruption that will be like a peace, I think. But it will only be on the surface that everyone will be saying peace and safety for a short time. But in the background, right, we're not going to go pull those arms off of Russia's doorstep where we've put them. That's what I mean. It won't be actual peace. It will be declared a peaceful treaty. It will be declared a successful, and I think we're going to get to it here. Maybe I'm setting this up too soon. But I had an article this week that's back to what we've always called the Cheney Plan, which is to divide Iraq and Syria up into portions. That's now out in the paper. And we always said when you see that become an acceptable answer, and look what it's taken to get to there. Don't tell me the 10,000 bombs we were dropping isn't what was needed to divide those lines. Sunnis, you got to move because this is going to be Shia. Kurds, you got to move because this is going to be Sunni. Shias, you got to move because this is going to be Kurdish. Whatever those lines were, there were people there that have been there, like the Mexicans that were out here on Punta Mita, generations. And the government comes in and says, yeah, we sold that to Bill Gates and a bunch of corporate people. They're going to build some big private hotels and a few multi-million-dollar lots for $10 million homes for the likes of these, superstars that do whatever they're told, like prostitutes. That's their reward. And these corporate prostitutes that are willing to slaughter innocent people through their financial crimes. Their reward are these, we're going to build houses for them on what was just your sustainable land, where you've been living for generations fishing. Nope, we're going to tear that down, and you're out of here. Well, some of those people say, no, I'd rather die. And so, from what I understand, they got their wish, or at least they were forcibly removed. And so you got to understand that that's all that's really happening in the world over there, as far as I can tell. This war in Syria is nothing but the dividing and reconquering of this territory, dividing of lines. All right, on the June 19th, here's one out of the AFP. U.S. aircraft carrier starts drills off Philippines. So again, is this the way to peace, you guys? This is how the U.S. is leading the way, and this is what we mean by the way toward a peaceful solutions through the UN? Sending weapons to upset Korea, sending weapons to upset Russia, sending weapons to upset China. Not saying, hey, wait a minute, how about first? Here's our option. We could send weapons, but we're asking the UN, let's step in first. Let's look for another option. Let's ask the UN to stop China, to stop Russia, to stop these other countries from what they're doing first, and show the evidence for that before we send any weapons anywhere. Let's make it why all this provocation first? Why do we send weapons and then accuse the other side of aggressive moves? So anyway, U.S. aircraft carrier starts drills off Philippines. And I'm sorry, you can make that a chicken and the egg. Who's starting the first move? As I say, one of the articles this week, I don't think I put it up here because I was losing, the capacity to keep track of all these articles these last few weeks on my header. But I remember that one of them was this admonition by Russia, which again, it's all wag the dog absurdity, but U.S. is the only real superpower, and ultimately Russia's not wanting any sort of problem with the only real superpower. That kind of idea. So, we're the people with all the pull. The UN apparently has all the pull. Our sanctions were able to cripple Iraq and kill 500,000 babies. You didn't see them doing anything like this. So I say it's all provocation on purpose, because if China was really doing anything that was threatening, it would stop without just simple provocation first. So that's my take on it, you guys, that this news is all, as what have I been saying, Dad, for at least a year, since this has really been so apparent to me. We're moving different chunks of hardware into play so that you don't have to move it all at once. Or when the stuff starts going down, you don't feel vulnerable because you don't have anything in place yet. And so now, Poland, Ukraine, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Georgia, Armenia, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, England, Philippines, Japan. Come on, look back over the last year and look at the sort of drills and movement of arms that have gone on around the world when we're talking peace process. We're telling Iran, we're threatening them. We got sanctions on Russia, sanctions in Iran this last year, threatening these people, and yet we're moving arms all over the world. We're not talking with people reasonably and saying, "Hey, look, let's get rid of these sanctions. Let's not build up any. We've got a plan to move a bunch of arms if we don't get some concessions." How come that? I don't see that discussed a year ago. If you knew that you were ready to move all these arms, which is a very expensive thing to do in an economy and in a world that's got no money, right? Who do you think's paying for this stuff, you guys? Taxpayers. The elites don't pay for this. The taxes pay for this. This is where they're spending the little bit of U.S. sweat and blood money that comes in from all the people that keep going to work every day. So anyway, aircraft carriers off Philippines, because we got to keep the balance. The 18th, Germany slams NATO, quote, warmongering on Russia. So again, I tell you guys, they're happy in the modern world. If there's one thing I'm learning with this occult stuff, they're happy to have out there all the stuff they're really doing. It's not hard to see where Donald Trump comes from if you want. You're just not going to see it by the news media. They'll call him anything in the liberal news, but they won't point out that he's a young, successful real estate agent, Freemason, that comes from a Freemason father and a Freemason connection into the New York Freemason real estate business. You won't get that pointed out, right? So this is the whole thing about it. But they're happy to let all the truth come out I think that because it's the way the elites demonstrate their power to each other and their ability to make the moves they're making. The sign that you can do it is to tell somebody that you're their Lord and Master. To tell them, yeah, I'm the one that put you there. Now, you don't want to fight me. Go do what you're told. And they keep doing it. Now you know you're in pretty good position. If you just do it and have to hide it, you always have to be afraid. What about when they find out? Is the stuff going to hit the fan and they take everything from me? But if I can keep putting out there so that they hear it through rumor. Meanwhile, I got plenty of media to deny it and to shut down those rumors if I have to. If that starts to become a little too popular. I can even kill people that wind up taking the rumor too far because I didn't want it to go so far. Right? So, I think they're happy for us to know that they worship Lucifer, because that's what they're ultimately wanting to come out in the open, according to Pike, who's certainly one of their heroes. They don't treat him like some laughable character. They treat him like a demigod. And they might even believe that might be who they make statues of. People they know have the blood in them. I don't know those things, but there's an odd connection with these people and the past of these certain rituals and these certain understandings. And so you come into this modern world and they're still having to hide certain things, but they're able to let out all of it. Just, little by little, piece by piece, so that only a few of us who are really trying, have the time and energy and aren't completely brainwashed by the television would even possibly catch all the clues. The rest of the world, they put the clue in Homer Simpson to laugh at you because you're more concerned with what Homer Simpson's doing anyway, or whatever the modern version. I don't know what they watch now, but you're watching Desperate Housewives and Shark Tank and the news and whatever. You're brainwashed. If your television's on at all, you're brainwashed. They don't give a crud what they show you in the world of alternative media. The fact that airplanes can't fly into buildings, you still believe the Roadrunner ran right through that brick and left his little outline. That's how brainwashed you are. You still think airplanes flew into those buildings. So think about that. If you can show people the Roadrunner runs into the rock and tell them, yep, that really happened, and have them all believe it, then you can start showing the rest of the inside people and tell them the real story and having it all be available for everybody. And so here's Germany's foreign minister criticizing NATO for having a bellicose policy that says towards Russia, describing it as warmongering. Right? So, and he quote, anyone who thinks you can increase security in the alliance with symbolic parades of tanks near the eastern border is mistaken. NATO had announced on Monday that it would deploy 4 battalions to Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland to counter a more assertive Russia ahead of a landmark summit in Warsaw next month. So, that's what you do ahead of a landmark summit. You don't say, hey, look, Russia, do you notice, because we put it all over the world press, that we have removed some of the weaponry on your doorstep before this pact as a show of good faith. We removed 4 battalions from Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland to demonstrate how much we hope that you will respond in kind. Wouldn't that even be a good political ploy if you were really on the sort of politics that they pretend they're on? So I'm sorry, you guys. I think you have to read. Warmongering's what they want, and they don't mind pointing out that that's exactly what's going on. They just have all their defensive remarks now to make that guy just look like a scaredy cat, or like an Obama, or a a liberal. You're just too liberal. You're too hopeful. You're too sympathetic. Whatever. You don't see the world with the hard edges it has. You got to protect against Russia, because remember we read last week, Dad, Russia's only means for becoming great is by beating up other countries. So that's all they know how to do, and they've got plans to be great again. We were told in one of these rags. Okay, so an embarrassing break. This is another Business Insider from June 16th. Dozens of State Department officials just revolted against Obama's Syria policy. Now, Dad, this is the biggest news this past week as far as what's coming very soon. Because what they've apparently broke ranks with on Obama is Obama doesn't want more war in Syria to divide it up into 3 parts, is what I'm going to give to you, the short end. And they do. And when you find out who they are, they're like nobodies. Like they had to go find... they range from a Syria desk officer in the Bureau of Near Eastern Affairs to a former deputy in the American ambassador in Damascus. Right? They range from a Syria desk officer. That sounds like, here's the name of somebody that works in Syria that gets donuts for the guy above him. Okay, give us him. He's part of our 50, right? To a former deputy to the American ambassador in Damascus. That sounds like the guy that used to get donuts. Used to. A former deputy to the American ambassador in Damascus. The deputy. The guy who picks up his mail. Who used to pick up the American ambassador's mail in Damascus. He's one of the guys revolting against him. Not, here's one of the generals in Syria right now. Here, here's the people who are, right? Tell me about who knows anything about what's going on. So what does this tell you, Dad, is simply that, this absurd war that isn't a war, they can't get anyone respectable to put their name on this idea that they just want to go in and start killing more people with, a declared American war, which is what I say you're about to get with Hillary Clinton this coming year. Because Obama, his position is to be the liberal conservative, the liberal, hold back. He's not going to go to war until it's too late, which means you got big false flag coming so that either of our two upcoming, either the xenophobe clown or the warmongering criminal can, take us to war. That's what I think's coming up. And they're pointing it out already. And the reason I think that, I wasn't prepared to really go with that feeling, Dad, but here they're telling us 50. They couldn't go as far as to say top level because they couldn't find anybody but the mailman and the donut deliverer. But they do tell us that 50 of the State Department officials have revolted against Obama's Syria policy. And you find out when you're aware of this, the Syria policy is, here we go, at least 51 mid to high level State Department officials. So they're mid to high level, but the two they chose to tell us about are the guy who goes for donuts, right? I don't know, who's the Syria desk officer? What's a desk? Come on, you guys, this is a world with titles. Does the desk officer sound like the guy they salute in the morning? Or the guy who sits there and answers the phone for the guy they salute in the morning? The Syria desk officer and the former deputy. But up here they tell us mid to high level. But we're not going to quote any of the high level guys because, darn it, we can't remember. Because this is journalism. And it doesn't add to the strength of my story to show you that, here's some real movers and shakers that don't want to do this. No, I don't have that story. What I've got is a BS, wag the dog. This is the left-wing approach to politics. To say I've got 50, quote, mid to high-level State Department officials, unquote. Meaning I've got nobodies who I can't mention, but I'm going to call them 51 mid to high-level State Department officials have signed a dissent channel cable breaking with President Barack Obama's policy on Syria and calling for U.S. airstrikes on the regime of Syrian President Bashar Assad. So that's the problem is, while we're winning against ISIS, I guess we're not killing enough innocent people over there in Syria. We're not creating enough chaos. We're not creating enough refugee problem. We are just not bombing the hell out of this man. Even though, what are we going to point to as a reason? Except what I hope one of these articles is before I finish, Dad. But anyway, they're presenting it as an embarrassing break. Poor Obama, he's trying to be the liberal. But all his mid to top level officials who can't be named because the only ones who can be are the guy who answers the phone and the guy who used to pick up the mail. So here's one from June 16th that's titled, The Trump Show Isn't Funny. Time for GOP leaders to walk out. So they're pointing out how Ohio Governor Kasich, I don't pay any attention to these guys, but they're pointing out this John Kasich is, he had said he'd go with Trump in the beginning, but I guess he thought it was a joke too, and he's ready to dump Trump and tell. So anyway, Dad, it looks to me like they're They're starting to see that as it comes in, Hillary's still too much of a criminal, and the clown xenophobe Trump is still too popular in the mainstream media. So they're starting to sway it. They're showing, even the people in the Republican side can't really think they could support Trump. And then here's the one, Dad, that the final one for today that really does tell the story of where we're at in the world. It's from June 16th. Post-Islamic State Iraq should be split into three. Top Kurdish, according to a top Kurdish official, not according to Dick Cheney, but of course we know that this is not a new plan once at all. And it says, once Islamic State is defeated, Iraq should be divided into three separate entities to prevent further sectarian bloodshed, with each state given to Shiite, Muslims, Sunni, and Kurds, a top Kurdish official said on Thursday. So this is what I've been pointing out for a long time, that the bomb dropping only makes sense as dividing lines of territory, not as going after this small militant group of ISIS. So I guess the one article I didn't see this week, or again, that I would have liked to talk about, showed all the, again, they keep talking about how these armies by Iraq or Syria are gaining ground and taking back these cities, but then they show me a picture of a dozen guys standing, by the side of the road, not engaged in battle, not taking back a town, not, picking up wounded civilians and getting them into ambulances. And I'm assuming this must be going on in this war-torn territory, and yet I never see picture of war. I just hear stories about battles. And then what I wanted to point out was, in this, it talked about some 25, that they had defeated, some 2,500 ISIS fighters that were holding up there in this place. So this article was pointing out that the number of troops, and I think it was 2,500 or something like that. And in this other article that I'd seen this week, and I'm sorry I didn't put it up because I thought it was important, it was pointing out the increase in drills, and that in those drills, the number of people involved is in the 10 or 12,000 involved in a drill. 10 or 12,000, and in fact, is it this one with the Philippines? Maybe that is the article, Dad. Let me just check this out. Here we go. Watch this. We've talked about the Philippines. This is an island nation they're one of the poorest nations in the world. Think Cuba, right? Think Madagascar. Poor countries. So I don't know how they pay their bill back to the World Bank. I'll bet it's with military bases, and we know that they make a lot of clothing in slave labor shops. The people certainly don't own the industries, and as I understand, the setup isn't for them ever to own the industries, the way it's structured. The Philippines has been improving its defense ties with the U.S., which means we've been raping the country to put guns over there. Its longtime treaty ally and former colonial ruler. Get it? Former colonial ruler. Then makes a treaty, like in Hawaii. We won't kill all your people if you sign over all your, sovereignty to us. To help boost the ability of one of Asia's weakest armed forces, because what we need is strong armed forces in the world that's trying to, diminish conflict that's reconciled through armed conflict. The U.S. exercises synchronize the activities of over 12,000 sailors, 140 aircraft, 6 combatants, and the 2 carriers. So how's that? 12,000 sailors, 140 aircraft, 6 combatants, and 2 carriers. Right? And when you think how many carriers we have, how many aircraft, how many And this is just synchronize the activity. It doesn't say they're all Americans. Probably a lot of Filipinos, probably a lot of Taiwanese, all of our allies in that part of the world. But that's my point. We can get them up for a drill, 12,000 strong, and we can't march through Mosul 50,000 strong as the world of Europeans and NATO members and such that aren't going to put up with terrorism, aren't going to put up with people terrorizing even their own citizens and chopping their heads off. So yeah, the numbers have never made sense to me, Dad, is what I want to point out. They keep talking, the strongest ISIS has ever been shown to me or told to me is 25 or 30,000 strong, and that would be spread out. We can do drills with that many people. So anyway, nothing's ever been proposed that we simply go with a strong force of people and take them out of here and there. And I think that might be what's coming up and what they're going to show that Obama's resisting and all this. Anyway, I see escalation of war right now before this peace comes, Dad, is what I think. I think some of these weapons have to go off. More of these things have to escalate, even if they're all staged, more false flags, so that it can become the brink of war, at least, before the 7-year covenant. I mean, if I had to guess, I would guess that we're pushing things to the brink of war before we're going to have this presentation of peace. And so notice how they point out how the post-Islamic State, Iraq, should be split. It's to prevent further sectarian bloodshed. They don't point out that these sectarians were not shedding blood until the United Nations, the American and UN countries' weapons were sold to them. Before they were able to get loans from the World Bank to buy money from the weapons from these people and kill each other. That there wasn't this sort of thing, right? Nobody wants to point out, but I'm starting to see that that's true. Not that these people didn't war with each other with swords and such, but this sectarian bloodshed that they want to sell us on, the reason we need to divide up their country, is not true. We had to go bomb all these people because they were living next to each other. And we don't want that because we can't sell this divided country. We can't push this Muslim world into this. See, this is the setting up through the agents of the third world that Pike was talking about, that I'm seeing. That's why we're not there yet. This is what's setting it up for they're dividing it so these people can all fight each other. Anyway, and I think fighting will continue. Whether the Great War, I still think there is going to be a 7-year covenant before that. I think that's all coming first. And everybody's going to say, oh, peace and safety, look at how close that was. And so I say we're in the build-up to the thing we're going to get relief from with the 7-year covenant so that we can all say, whoa, look how close that was. And they're going to be able to point to religion in that first 3.5 years. That'll be the big argument. Look at how these religious nuts almost drew us in. And that's the great things that are going to come out of this little horn. We need to unite religions behind this symbol. And look, we got power from heaven to declare that this is right. And that's going to give them this, the whole world's going to cheer. Yeah, no more Christianity, no more Islam, no more, Hebraic covenant, Mosaic covenant. No more Jesus. So anyway, that's the world Dad, that's the best I can do right now to pull these strings together for you. Thanks so much for having me on the show. Happy Father's Day yesterday. I love you and I miss you.
Well, Tony, I think you're exactly right. And it was another superb analysis of this week's happenings in the news in the Middle East. And folks, I hope you enjoyed the show today. And give us a little feedback. Go to BroSal.org on YouTube or the Philadelphian Church on YouTube. And comment, drop us a line, subscribe. And if you like what you're hearing and you want this to continue, drop us a frankincense offering. There's a button right up on the right-hand corner of the title to keep this ministry and the word coming to you. And for Tony, I'm Brother Sal. Till next week, we want you to have a great day in Christ. Thank you.